Now, suspended Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane returns to the Section 194 inquiry into her fitness to hold office. But this time, she won't have her legal counsel, which includes Advocate Dali Mpofu. She cited financial difficulties in paying her counsel. So how will this play out? Well, let's discuss this with legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala. Mr. Zikalala, good morning and thank you very much for your time. So as stated in that intro, the suspended Public Protector will be appearing without her legal counsel from today onwards. But what impact does the absence of a legal representative have on the process and its fairness?
It has the potential of making it flawed, because you remember that having a legal rep representing you, it means that your illegal interests are protected. You have someone who's going to advise you as to what to say and not to say, someone who's going to be able to raise objection on your behalf. Now, if you don't have that and you say the proceedings must then go on, it means that whatever is being discussed maybe at a later stage be declared by the court to be null and void. And you don't want that to happen, because it would mean all those proceedings, what you were trying to do, the amount of time and money that you have spent, would all be in vain. So it's important for the committee to sit down and say, we do not want to change the process as much as it has its flaws up until now. But let's make sure that you are legally protected, because the reason why you were given an attorney in the first place, or a legal representative in the first place. So let's not change the process by continuing without you being legally protected by your legal advisor.
Advocate Dali Mpofu on Fridays raised a very interesting point that the parliamentary committee still has its legal team, which has been hard at work processing voluminous documents. So in that instance, is it or would it be seen as fair, or as Dali stated, that perhaps they need to do away with their legal team to see exactly how difficult it would be to process some of that information and to actually allow for a smooth running of the whole process?
In fact, Advocate Dali Mpofu was hitting the nail on the head, because he was saying you are being guided every step of the way by a team of legal professionals which are able to advise you as to what to say and what not to say, how to analyze things, and the way in which you must proceed and do your work. Now, why do you want to rob the public protector of the same benefits, the benefits by the way which were confirmed or confided on her by the Constitutional Court? So why do you want to say to her, you can continue not being represented, while on the other side, the scales are not actually balanced? So what we were saying was, let me highlight the importance of having someone who's going to say, I'm a legal practitioner or legal advisor who's going to advise you as to what to do in these proceedings, which is very important, because without it, it may render the proceedings invalid or flawed. And you don't want that after you spend so much time and money from the day in which the committee was created, from the day in which the first witness produced their evidence, and it's going to impact in the analysis if you continue, if one of the parties are not legally represented.
Her team, as well as the committee, have all been speaking about the reality that many South Africans face, which is that the economy is on its knees. And they went on to state, Mr. Janti stated that, you know what, there are thousands of South Africans without the kind of legal representation that she has enjoyed, and perhaps even suggesting that it is a privilege. Just your views around that, because it is very costly, though.
It is not a privilege at all. Just remember, she is employed as a public protector as it stands now. If you look at the records, even though she might be suspended, but she is the public protector of South Africa. And by law, she ought to be protected legally, because all the instances or allegations of transgressions have happened while she was within the employ of the public protector's office. So it is not something that she has done privately on her own. It is something with charges that emanated from what she was doing when she was fully employed in that particular office. So that office is supposed to foot the bill. What could have happened was an instance of saying that this is where we are going to cap those amounts at. They may hinder the rendering of those legal services at the end of the day, but there's at least some assistance which then comes in. If we turn the tables around and then say, let's ask Parliament, how much money have you spent in your legal representatives by them being there on a daily basis? Is it equatable to the amount in which the public protector has spent, taking into account what is at stake and what needs to be proved and the type of reputational damage that may be suffered? But most importantly, even look beyond that. Look at the integrity of the Office of the Public Protector and what it ought to do, and then you fully understand why there's a need for legal representatives to be paid for by the state, and also to be provided to the public protector. But it again moves back to what I've been stating since day one, of saying the creation of the committee and what the committee ought to find may be a bit flawed, because they have taken a quasi-judicial service or quasi-judicial inquiry and turned it into something which is not going to bring the results in which they are required from the presiding officers who, and I say this with due respect, are not really qualified to be able to assess what needs to be assessed at the end of the day. You can't take a person who is not a lawyer, is not able to be a presiding officer and say to them, go and adjudicate whether somebody is doing something which is correct or not correct. On the basis of misconduct, what are instances of misconduct when it comes to the public protector? What are instances of incapacity or incompetence when it comes to the public protector?
Sorry to interject there, Mpumelelo, but some would say then if that were to be the argument, then it means Parliament would never get any work done. They would hold nobody accountable if it always would have to be that when they run such inquiries, they have to be qualified in the area of law. Because in this instance, they've brought in legal experts to assist them in that respect. But then what inquiry would they hold if the prerequisite would be them being au fait with legal matters?
If you need to hold somebody accountable, you must know what accountability or what type of accountability you are looking for. So if you don't know the ground rules, they can simply answer to you and you can accept whatever that has been answered. So you wouldn't be able to interrogate whether their responses that they're responding to you are accurate or not, which is why, by the way, in instances such as these ones, there are commissions or inquiries that are created which are chaired by legal practitioners, because the legal practitioner will then be able to know what does the public protector's access, how do you conduct investigations as you were taught in school and also in practice, what do you say would be a reasonable public protector that fully understands their legal duties and the manner in which investigation should be done. So you have a better understanding of the grounding of all the background information and how those particular investigations are done. If you don't have that, that means you are assessing something in which you are not qualified to assess. You are not going to be able to know what is wrong and what is right. And by that, whatever that you are going to determine is not going to be accurate because you are simply relying on someone who has advised you. Meanwhile, you were in the driving force as a presiding officer, supposed to be asking questions and stopping questions from being asked. You have failed to do that in your execution. So if they don't fix that from the start, which is why they have these problems that they are running into, which is why they have these applications in which they have been asked to recuse themselves because they are simply doing a process in which they are not qualified to do, with all due respect.
Mm-hmm. And then today, though, 10 o'clock, she will be present. She has stated she will be there, but she will not utter a word. So what happens to the process? Because she says she'll remain silent. She has nobody to lead her.
That's exactly what she's saying. She's saying, I'm going to respect the invitation that I've received from Parliament. I'm being a responsible citizen by going to attend. However, I do not have the tools of trade in which Parliament would have had within their legal practitioners and advisors who are there on a daily basis, who will be able to answer and be able to provide guidance even to the chairperson as what ought to have happened. So what a reasonable or a prudent chairperson ought to do is to say, let's suspend these proceedings. Let's try and find the money where we can find it and be able to conclude these proceedings by making sure that the legal protector is protected. This is not only a requirement when it comes to natural justice. It's what the Constitutional Court, the highest court in the land, stated when we were starting and drafting these rules, that the public protector must not attend these proceedings without being provided legal representatives. So if you are going to go against that order and say, let's continue because you're a legal practitioner, again, you are going to taint these proceedings. And if it goes on review, the chances of these proceedings being set aside are quite high. And for me, if you're going to spend so much time and money and only for those proceedings to be set aside due to an irresponsible decision that you have taken, indeed, you have participated in a wasteful and fruitless expenditure.
Mpumelelo, I want to take you back to that statement around the inquiry or those that form part of that committee not necessarily being legally qualified for that. Just clarity, do you mean that specifically for that Section 194 inquiry, perhaps it should have been a process that is run by those who are familiar with the law, or you mean most of these committees in Parliament? Because like I say, many would say then that means all of them must have studied law, because most of those processes are to a certain extent quasi-judicial processes.
Now, but this one is a quasi-judicial process which is controlled by the Constitution, which is why it is called a Section 194 inquiry. Because Section 194 states clearly that if you want to remove a public protector, that public protector must be found guilty of misconduct, must be incompetent, or must be suffer for incapacity. Now, let's go back to the rules. When you say that someone is incompetent, or does not have the capacity to apply or to be in that particular office. What exactly do you mean? If you say that the person has participated in acts of misconduct, what exactly do you mean? So if you don't have those ground rules and a perfect understanding of what those ground rules are in the acceptance in legal jurisprudence, that's where we are going to find a problem, because we will not be able to assess that. I will again use this example. I can't go and assess whether a neurosurgeon is performing a surgery correctly because I've never been a doctor. So I would think that they're doing correctly by cutting certain veins or maybe digging into the skin with a scalpel when they're doing something which is so if you are going to engage in such a very important act of assessing whether a leader of a chartered institution is doing something correctly or incorrectly, at least have someone who is legally qualified and would understand what we mean when we say a person is doing the investigation. A person would understand of saying when the court matter goes on review and it is set aside, it does not mean that you're incompetent. It means that you've got it wrong, however, within the confines of the law.
All right. Mpumelelo, thank you very much for your time this morning. That was legal expert Mpumelelo Zikalala.